Welcome to the EO Wonder podcast. Today, I'm so excited to have Gino Wickman with us. Gino became an entrepreneur at 21 and has been passionate about understanding what makes businesses and entrepreneurs succeed. At just 25, he took over his family's struggling business, turned it around, and ran it for 7 years before successfully selling it. Gino then focused on helping other entrepreneurs and leaders achieve their business and personal goals. Drawing from his extensive experience, he developed the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS, which is very famous in EO, a practical method for guiding companies to succeed. He has personally led over 2,000 full-day sessions for more than 135 companies, helping them implement EOS. Gino is also the author of the best-selling book Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business, which has sold over 1 million copies, along with 5 other books in the Traction library that have collectively sold nearly 3 million copies. As the founder of EOS worldwide, Gino has helped tens of thousands of businesses implement EOS with the support of an international team of over 800 professional and certified EOS implementers, and today more than 250,000 businesses use EOS tools globally, including my business, benefiting from Gino's insights into mastering their business challenges. Gino's latest project focuses on helping driven entrepreneurs improve not only their outer world, but also their inner world. In his new book, Shine, he shares his 10 disciplines for maximizing your impact and inner peace. Gino has practiced these disciplines for over 2 decades and is so excited to share them with us today. So let's get started. Gino, what were you like before you came across these disciplines? Take us 20 years ago before you had these tools.
Oh boy. Well, first of all, let me say hello to you, Kalika, and it's so great to see your face again. We did this a few years ago, and
Yes.
whenever I do anything with and for EO, I feel like I'm coming home because I was an 8-year member of EO, as you mentioned there. So just thrilled to be here and thrilled to be with you. And so to answer your question, if I look back 20 years ago, some of these disciplines I've been using for little more than 25 years. So let's jump back 30 years ago and go to my mid-20s. What was I like? Well, I wasn't a big mess. So I was a pretty organized guy as I look back and realize it. I was a very intense, driven person. I was an entrepreneur in the making because I really don't believe I discovered and understood fully that I was an entrepreneur until my late 20s. And so I had all the common characteristics, all the traits. And so I was just this hardworking, driven person that just wanted to be successful, wasn't exactly sure what that was going to look like, but there's the best, fastest version of my working self, at least in my 20s.
So organized, driven, and intense.
Yeah, those are pretty, those are 3 pretty good words as I look back at that summary.
Which describes most of the entrepreneurs that are probably listening to this podcast, thus why you're here to share.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, most of them are not organized, but definitely driven and intense.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So in Shine, oh, first of all, one more thing is I know Ron. So your co-author, Ron, wrote a book called Do Nothing, and you wrote this book together. How did you guys meet?
Yeah, it's actually Rob
Rob,
Dubay.
sorry, Rob.
Oh, no,
Sorry.
that's okay. So we met, he was actually one of my first clients. So he was one of the first EOS clients that I practiced on in creating EOS. He and I were fellow EO members, and that's how we met. And so after years of him being a client, we just became dear friends, and we've met, a few times a year in a coffee shop since then. And he did a long form interview for me on a previous book that we added to the audiobook for the EOS Life book. And as we left the studio and went and had lunch that day, this is now almost 3 years ago, he said, Gino, I really want to help you take the 10 disciplines to the world. And the rest is kind of history. So he's been an amazing partner. He's the embodiment of freeing his true self. So he's just the perfect partner and co-author in this project.
Oh, I'm so glad. So let's dive into the 10 disciplines. Do you want to go over them with
Sure,
us? Or
absolutely.
should I just pick a whole bunch?
Yeah. Well, here's what I love
Okay.
to do as kind of the starting point is just give an overview of the 10 really high level.
Yes.
So your listeners know what we're talking about. And then I then look to you. You know your audience better than I know your audience. Just pick the ones that really resonate strongest. But here are the 10 disciplines for maximizing your energy, your impact, and your inner peace. And so here we go. Discipline number 1 is 10-year thinking. Number 2, take time off. Number 3, know thyself. Number 4, be still. Number 5, know your 100%. Number 6, say no, often. Number 7, don't do $25 an hour work. Number 8, prepare every night. Number 9, put everything in one place. And number 10, be humble.
So I really like the one that's know your 100%.
Yes. Well, so let's dive into that one. And with each discipline, as we dive in, I always like to start when I'm teaching them with what I call a bold statement. And the purpose behind the bold statement is if you would just do what I tell you, and most won't. Obviously, you have to be convinced, sold, whatever the word is. But the bold statement is that if you would just listen to me, do what I tell you, this is the thing that will give you all of the benefits and the results of the discipline. And so for discipline number 5, know your 100%, the bold statement is decide on and commit to the perfect number of hours per week and weeks per year that you will deliver your craft to the world. So with that said, that's the one that's jumping out at you. To go a little deeper now, what this is this is determining your work container. And so as all of the disciplines come together, you'll see that they create a platform, a foundation to create time and space for you to maximize your outer world and your inner world. And so with this one, we're talking about your outer world maximum output as a driven entrepreneur. And so the idea is we all have a gift, a craft, an ability, a skill set, this value that we bring to the world. And the idea is to figure out your perfect number of hours per week and weeks per year that is the maximum output, where one more hour you would start to burn out, one less hour you get bored. And so I always like to use me as an example. So for the last 25 years, I have worked 40 weeks a year, 55 hours a week. That is my perfect number. What's changing for me as I now go forward to the future, and it's literally changing this year, is I'm looking to shift that and get that down to about 40 hours a week now, because I'm ready to scale back on that. But we all have a different formula. For some people, it's 30 hours a week. For some people, it's 80 hours a week. We are all different.
And it's not 4 hours a week.
It is not, but it could be. Certainly those teachings are out there. But you decide for you wherever you are. If you've sold your business, you're riding off into the sunset, and you want to spend 4 hours dabbling in something, amen and hallelujah.
Okay, so that is outer. What about inner? Be still.
Beautiful. I love that we're going there next. So be still. Let's start with the bold statement. And so the bold statement here is to sit in silence for 30 minutes every day. Okay. And so as I say that, I know that probably scared the heck out of some number of your audience, and some are already doing it. And so when we talk about be still and sitting in silence, there are 4 forms of stillness, at least that we recommend and we talk about. And so it's meditation, it's prayer, it's contemplation, it's journaling. So whatever works best for you. But as a driven entrepreneur, we're always going. To work on the inner world, we've got to put the brakes on. We've got to stop, and we've got to be still so that kind of our soul can catch up, so that everything can catch up and get clear. And so for me, it's meditation. I spend 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. So I shoot for every day, but 3 to 5 times a week. As long as it's a regular discipline for you, you'll get all of the benefit. But what will happen is again, it will calm the central nervous system. I always talk about what's going on below, and I always put my hands under my chin. I talk about what's going on below the surface. The tectonic plates are shifting. And so we driven entrepreneurs, we're pretty darn amped up. And so stillness, sitting in silence 30 minutes a day, helps to calm those tectonic plates, helps to create some stillness, and then let stuff come up. And so anything in there that is blocked or holding us back, or that is not creating inner peace, will come up. And that's why this is so scary for some people. You just have to let it come up.
So it's sort of like hitting that red button on a blow dryer, you know, when it like amps out. It's like resetting your whole mind because it's so important. Like you said, we're constantly driven. So what kind of meditation do you do? Like transcendental meditation, Vipassana, or you're sitting in silence?
Yeah, I'm just sitting in silence. And it's I have read and listened to, I can't tell you how many books in different forms of meditation. I've actually taken a transcendental class as well. What works for me, the greatest advice I was given by someone is to just figure out your own formula, because we really all do have our own formula. And I'm not knocking any of the forms out there because they're all great. We beings, there are 8.5 billion of us on this planet. I think part of the formula is that we sit in silence. And so it's figuring out your formula. And so for me, I sit in a big, comfortable chair, a big, comfortable leather chair. Like I said, 30 minutes for me. When I sit, I kind of ground myself. That feels good to me. I kind of clear my space, if you will. And then I just close my eyes. I do a few deep breaths to start things off to get me to kind of settle in. It takes me about 10 minutes for my mind to finally stop racing. And then I drop in, man. Something happens right around that mark. And then the next 20 minutes is kind of where the magic happens. And again, I calm down and whatever needs to come up comes up. And I just kind of sit back and watch the show, for lack of a better term. So that's my formula. That formula may continue to change over time, but that's the one that's currently working for me.
Yeah, because I do believe that calmness is the seat of power. And so once you're calm, it really resonates through everything that you do. I'm also training to be a mindfulness teacher at the Vipassana. And so also doing these silent retreats, I've done three now, 10-day silent retreats. It really, really makes a difference in your life.
Yeah, and if I may, I was somebody taught me something, and this was really insightful. And it's just kind of picturing like almost a glass jar with a lid on it, okay? And in that glass jar, picture it being full of water to the top, and picture it having about, 10% of the jar filled with sand. Well, if you shake that jar, obviously that water is very murky, but if you set that jar down on the table and just let it sit there for a few minutes, the sand will settle, the water becomes crystal clear. That's exactly what happens when we sit in stillness. And so we're walking around cloudy. And when you practice that stillness, everything just kind of settles down. And then again, as driven entrepreneurs, that calms our central nervous system. But now let's go to the outer world now. Now, when we go to the outer world, we come out of that meditation, we're sharper, we're clearer, we're working from intuition now. It's more of an inside out approach to the world. You just make better decisions. You're much more creative and much more impactful for the world.
Yeah, and you're just so much more connected to the decisions that you make.
For sure. And you're present. I mean, you're present and aware. When we are present and aware, that's when the real magic happens. And this helps you become present and aware.
Was there a catalyst for you to actually make it a habit and a discipline? Because a lot of people say that they want to do it. A lot of people say that they can't do it. Was there something that happened in your life that helped you?
No, there was no one event. For me, my soul probably got pinged somewhere around 30 years old. That just kind of woke me up to start thinking about this stuff. I was reading the book Celestine Prophecies. And so through my 30s, I tried various forms of meditation, but very hit or miss. In my 40s, a little bit more. It's just in the last probably 2, 3, maybe 4 years that I've really committed, because I'm really starting to see the benefits and the value of it.
Okay, so that's two we've discussed so far.
Sure.
How about number one, 10-year thinking?
Yes. And so let's start with the bold statement here. And so the bold statement is shift your mind from short-term thinking to thinking in 10-year time frames. And so what this is all about, again, it's 10-year thinking. This is not 10-year goal setting, but certainly do that. That's perfectly appropriate. This is all about shifting your mindset to just simply thinking in longer term time frames. And so for many driven entrepreneurs, we are focused on the here and now. We want everything now, 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 this week, this month, this quarter, worst case, this year. Well, the idea is to expand that thinking, expand that time frame. I push for 10 years. Some people really struggle with that. So we got to start with 1 year in some cases, then 3, then 5, but ultimately 10 years. The idea is to push it out even further than that and get to a point where there literally is no time, but we won't get that heavy. Let's just start with getting people to think in these longer term timeframes. So when you do that, the irony, I learned this at 35 years old, and it was truly transformative for me. And so when you do that shift, all of a sudden, time slows down. Again, that calmness comes over you that we're talking about. You feel less hurried. All of a sudden, you have more clarity. You start making better decisions. And then, ironically, you literally get there faster. So there's a great saying that says, we grossly overestimate what we can accomplish in a year, but we underestimate what we can accomplish in 10 years. So we can create, an empire in 10 years. So the idea is, again, thinking though. And so if you picture the person that you want to be 10 years from now, and whether that's something relational or business or physical or whatever it is, when you do 10-year thinking and you're seeing things in 10-year timeframes, all of a sudden the decisions you make today are better long-term decisions. And so if you want to be healthy 10 years from now, that thing you're about to put in your mouth, you're going to second guess that. If you want to be happily married 10 years from now, that thing you're about to say to your spouse, you may stop yourself from saying it, and so on and so forth. If you want to be wealthy 10 years from now, the money that you're socking away or investing, you need to be anyway. So I think you get the point.
Yeah, and it also comes with like having a close-knit family. You talked about your spouse, but also your children. Because oftentimes, like as CEOs or as, the heads of our families, like we feel like we can talk to our children in a different way. But if we want them to be in our lives in 10 years,
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. Hold back on that thing that you're about to say. In most cases, they're going to turn out fine. But yes, absolutely 100%. And again, here we are. We're talking about outer world success, inner world success. And so certainly you'll accomplish more in the outer world, but also the inner world. Like I said, you get a calm that comes over you. There's a calm that comes over you when you shift your thinking to 10-year timeframes from that hurried pace that most of us driven entrepreneurs are thinking about now, 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 now.
one of the podcast guests that we had, Don Dapani, talked about how is planting seeds so that when in 300 years, the seeds that he's planting, the trees will be there long after he's gone. And it's magical when you start thinking about the earth as well too, and maybe even giving back to philanthropy, etc.
All of it. And, and another example is business, so when I created EOS, which is now, I created it, what's it been, 22, 23 years ago, I created it to last 100 years. So in that 5-year period I was creating it, I was thinking about how can this last for at least 100 years. Now, whether it will or not, who knows? We're 23 years in, but what I do know is it's lasting longer than it would had if I had not thought that way. And so, yes, whatever it is, environmental, health, finances, business, shift your thinking into 10-year timeframes, and everything will get better and you will get there faster.
Well, I think you're on your way with 800 implementers worldwide. That's
Yeah,
just the beginning of it,
250,000 companies running in the US. It's pretty crazy.
right?
It's insane.
The word of mouth with that as well too. I'm still surprised when people don't know what it is. Like I always use the acronym, and they were like, "What?" I'm like, "Okay, you're really not in business if you haven't used EOS."
Yeah,
Okay, let's dive into another one.
sure. Yeah,
How
please.
about know thyself?
Yeah. So one of my favorites. And so here's the bold statement first. So the bold statement is to be your true self 100% of the time, 24/7, 365. And so what we're talking about here is you being your true self. But the only way that you can be your true self is to know thyself. So it starts first by really understanding yourself. And this one kind of goes, I like to say, 4 levels deep from a standpoint of knowing yourself is first and foremost understanding your skills and abilities, all the stuff you're good at. It's then understanding your personality and your traits, really getting to know kind of your MO there. Then it's understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. And then we start to go deep, because then beyond that is the next level and the final level, which is really understanding what's going on below those tectonic plates that I talked about, what's really going on inside the inner world. So again, this is all about being yourself fully in the world. We got to know ourselves first. And so as we know and understand those things about ourselves, we get clarity. And so when we go inside and we start to understand, sometimes we realize that we have blocks, we have blocked energy, we have things that have happened to us in our life that we've held on to. And we, driven entrepreneurs especially, tend to build these masterful armor shields around us, these suits of armor to protect us from the world. And it's just simply past conditioning, trauma, pain, whatever it was. And we create these just perfect personas, if you will, or at least we think they're perfect. Well, as we really start to know ourselves so we can be ourselves, it's a matter of going in there and seeing what's really going on, why the tectonic plates are shifting, why the central nervous system is amped up, and you're going to start to discover things. This is why that stillness we talked about is so important. You've got to create time and space for that stuff to come up and really understand how to remove those blocks so you can fully be your true self in the world and shine, as is the title of the book. And so what we're talking about here is fully freeing your true self, letting your soul shine and just fully being you in the world.
So, what do you know about yourself?
What do I know about myself? Well, what a great question. I'll tell a story and then this will kind of lead up to the journey. So my aha moment was my wife had thrown me a 30th surprise birthday party. And so I walk into that room and 100 sets of eyeballs yell surprise. And I look around this room and I see 6 different factions of my life. Okay. And so I see my family, I see my wife's family, I see my high school friends, I see my new friends, I see my employees, and I see my business partners. And as I look around that room and see the 6 factions of my life, I realized that I was literally a different person for each one of those factions. I was literally 6 different people. And then I said to myself, holy shit, who am I going to be today? And it was that day was the turning point where I said, I'm just going to start being me. Okay. And so with that, then I've been on a journey of what I call shedding layers and really getting to the core of who I am. And so do I fully know who that is? I don't know. But what I've learned as I really in this last 4 years has been most profound, I should say, because like I said, it starts with learning skills and abilities, personalities and traits, strengths and weaknesses, but then going into the inside stuff. So what I've learned about myself is, first of all, I'm a fun guy. Like we talked about earlier, I'm an intense guy. I'm a hardworking guy, but I do work hard and I play hard. I really enjoy having fun. I am a loving husband and parent. I'm a good friend to my friends. And so those kind of things. What I started to learn though is I realized looking back that it was around age 15 for me is when I put on the suit of armor. And so the trauma and the pain and the conditioning and the experiences I had gone through as a tiny kid. So I'm now 6'4". I sprung up at around 19 years old. But back then I was this tiny, highly sensitive, very creative kid, picked on, bullied, all that stuff. We don't have to go through all of my trauma and pain, although I do put it in this book so the driven entrepreneurs out there can relate to it. But nonetheless, what I realized in really going inside and knowing myself is it was around age 15 that I put that suit of armor on, which is just basically our ego finally deciding, okay, here are the protective layers we're going to use in life. Here's the persona we're going to create. And so I created this tough guy persona that wasn't that sensitive, creative kid anymore. It was just this driven, hardworking thing that served me well for 35 years until I kind of had a bit of an awakening about 4 years ago, where that's what forced me to go inside and look. And so as I then realized that's when it happened at age 15, I then just started shedding those layers and understanding, oh, that's why I do that. That's why I react that way to people. That's why I protect myself from that. And you're just letting it come up. Again, back to stillness and meditation. A lot of it will come up for me there. There's 2 amazing books I read called Letting Go and Untethered Soul. Those 2 books were really profound in just helping people understand in a very simple fashion what shedding layers are all about, what letting go is all about. And so in answering your question, very long answer to your question. So hopefully you're all hanging in there on this answer as well as you, Kalika. But But that's what I've learned about myself is I'm a person that has had pain and trauma that has had an effect on my life, and I can shed all of that and I can be more free. And so I sit here today, my true self is freer than it's ever been. I am more creative. I am coming from intuition more. The work that I do is more from a calling. Now, where I am on the scale of 0 to 100%, I don't know how free I am. I hope it's like 90%. I fear it's like 2%, but who the heck knows where I am? The whole thing's a journey, and I'm just having a blast with it. Hopefully that answers your question.
So, when I was in my 20s, I took the Standards of Integrity exercise that Dr. Maria Nemeth did, shared with her, with all of us on Oprah in a book called The Energy of Money. And so I have my Standards of Integrity here in front of me.
Yeah.
I am kind, inspiring, wise, loving, resilient, gentle, patient, creative, healthy, trustworthy. And what I realize when I'm not showing up as these values, I feel really bad about myself. So if I'm saying an unkind word or thinking an unkind thing, and I'm sure that's also probably what you think too. Like if you come into a room and not showing up as your intelligent, creative, organized self, something feels a little off, right? Because you recognize that it's
Absolutely.
not who you are.
You bet it. And so we're getting right to it now because that thing you just read there, that's your true self, assuming it's true. And let's pretend it is. And I can't imagine how it's not. That's your true self. That's your soul. And when you're not your true self, yes, there's a disturbance in the force. And if we can really, again, stillness, listen to our guts, listen to our intuition, it will tell us if we're off the bullseye or not. Because as you say that, I also realize I'm very generous. I am very loving. What I've realized
Supportive.
in all this work is I'm just a cushy love ball. So I've been this hard driving tough guy all these years, and it's really not me. It was just more of a facade, that I thought served me well as I, built the empires that I built.
And I think it's, none of our faults because this is a societal thing that is surrounding us. Tara Brach talks about the trance of unworthiness in her book, Radical Acceptance. And it's something that, we, like you said, we use it as a spacesuit to protect ourselves from
Yes.
everyone else.
Yeah.
And and shedding that is really our life's practice.
Yeah, and I'll read the subtitle of the book to you because it says it all and we're right on it. And that is how looking inward is the key to unlocking true entrepreneurial freedom. That's what this is all about. I'm a guy who is obsessed about helping entrepreneurs get everything they want out of their businesses and their lives. And this is just where the journey is taking me next because, I've had this experience in the last 4 years of really going deep, and I'm realizing that there's more to be had here as driven entrepreneurs. We have not reached our full potential. And so the real magic comes when we go inside and just clean house because we are very impactful in our current state. We are 10 times more impactful when we clean out the inside and really come from the inside out. Because most of us, the drive is coming from the outside in. It's all being weighed against judgment, opinions, competition, comparison. When you shed all that stuff is irrelevant. And all of a sudden it just comes right from the inside. And so now, like I said earlier, it becomes more of a calling. It's more intuitive. It's more about a purpose, and we make an even bigger impact.
Have you also used any of those personality tools like Myers-Briggs to
I
figure out?
Yeah, I almost want to say all of
Yeah.
them, but when I talk about those first few layers of knowing thyself, when we talk about skills and abilities, personalities and traits, strengths and weaknesses, I mean, I've taken at least 20 of them, but some of my favorite, Colby is my favorite of all
Yes.
time because it's so powerfully simple. But I'm a big Myers-Briggs fan. I'm a big DISC fan, Strengths Finder. I could try and rattle off all 20 of them, but I'm a I'm a fanatic about profiling tools for sure.
So what is your Myers-Briggs?
INTJ.
Wow. So you are an INTJ commander, but I, you're you're an introvert, but you're showing up as charismatic. The one thing that I was thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, you must be an extrovert.
No, so I love that you say that because, that's a common misconception. And there's even a study that shows most entrepreneurs are introverts. So what happens, what I'm right now, I am teaching, I'm sharing a message, I'm helping. And so when I am helping, when I'm practicing my craft, it looks like I'm being an introvert, but you can't shut me up because I'm so fanatical about helping and teaching and making an impact on people's lives. Now, all of a sudden, shift to small talking about the weather in kids' sports. I'd rather stick a fork in my eye, go to a cocktail party or a house party so I am an absolute introvert. And so the litmus test is, where do you get your energy from? Do you get your
Okay.
energy from silence going inside, or do you get your energy from, talking to a whole bunch of people? There's the litmus test. Extroverts get their energy from just bouncing stuff off people and talking to them. For me, I go into silence. I love to just read a book, sit in silence, ponder, think. That's where my energy gets restored. So yes, I am an introvert.
And also a sage, because someone who loves to teach is also a good communicator, which is
Yeah,
what you are as well too. But
that's
and also, yeah, I thought like one of your values must be like charismatic or something because you're so good on
well, I
on
appreciate
doing
that, and
this.
that's just my soul coming out. Wherever that comes from, that's not an act. That's just me being incredibly passionate about the topic. Now, if we're going to talk about, I don't know, I'm trying to pick another crazy topic like, basket weaving, you will not see the same level of energy.
100%. Okay, so take time off. Discipline number two.
Yes, vital. So, with take time off, let's start with the bold statement. And so, the bold statement is to take 130 days off per year and don't think about work the entire day. Okay. And so, that should have shocked a few people. And so, with that, let's start with the math, because 130 days is what we're prescribing in this book and in these disciplines. So, if you just took off every weekend and holidays and 2 vacations, you're already damn near at 130 days. So this is not as crazy as it sounds. But the idea is, just like we talked about with knowing your 100%, we're managing energy and impact here. And so the point is, you have to turn the world off. You have to take a break. You have to sharpen the axe or the saw, as the analogy goes, because we need to restore our energy as driven entrepreneurs, so we're the best versions of ourselves when we go into that work container and provide that 100%. And so you just have to figure out your formula. And so for me, it's always been 150 days a year. It's between 150 and 160. I'm just prescribing 130. I take the month of August off every year. I have done that for over 20 years running. I am convinced by that month that I take off and the time I take off, I'm further ahead. I come back clearer, more creative, more energized. I get more done by taking that time off.
What do you do in August?
Absolutely nothing. So that's the short answer. Occasionally I will travel, or we will travel, but it's not about travel. It's not about going to some, exotic place for a month. I am typically home almost every one of those 30 days in terms of in my, city that I live in. And so again, occasionally we'll travel. We went to Alaska for 2 weeks last year during it, but it's all about just not working. And what's crazy is how fast those 30 days fill up with life, And so the idea is, I'm just focused on, in that month, friends, family, and myself. And so that's it. And I let what comes, and lots of great stuff comes. It's just not any work. The whole idea is to not think about work for 1 minute for 30 whole days.
That's hard when you say like, "Hey, don't think about a monkey."
Well, exactly. And obviously it's impossible to not think about business, but I'm so disciplined. If an idea comes to me, if I see something, all I do, on September 1st, I just start popping stuff into my calendar. And so September 1st's all day list is very lengthy when I come back, but I just quickly capture it somewhere so that I can let it go, know that the thought is captured, and then get back to just focusing on life.
Well, it's great that you have that intention, like you said, because once you're aware that, oh, okay, there goes that work thought, let's capture it. And you have a place for it too. You're not mean to it.
Yeah, and there's a school of thought though that also says when something like that comes up, don't even write it down because if it was important, it will come back. Unfortunately, I'm not that advanced that I'm able to do that. So I still have to pop it in my calendar really fast so it doesn't get lost.
But do you read or
Oh
like,
yeah,
but
very
not
very much so.
work
But it's
books?
not. It's rarely, if ever, a business book. And so the August reading is more about personal development and growth, that type of stuff. Maybe a novel here or there, but I stay away from any business reading so I don't get pulled into it. But in the last 20 years, and taking August off, have I read a business book? I probably have, but I cannot remember. So odds are the answer is no.
What's your favorite self-development book or what you're reading now?
But right now, let me think, because I haven't had a real mind blower. So the two that stand out as I share, I would say this one, because this one's about 2 years old, but I've read it a few times and I recommend it to every driven entrepreneur. So the book is called Driven by Dr. Doug Brackman. Highly recommend that. And I even reference it in this new book because the beauty of that is helping we driven entrepreneurs understand our DNA, because it is DNA. 10% of the population is driven. 4% of us are driven entrepreneurs. And Doug does this masterful job of just helping you understand the blessing and the curse that it is being driven and kind of how to manage that. But it's just more about the awareness and the peace of mind that comes with knowing that this is normal. It's a DNA issue. There's an allele in the D2, D4 gene, and we don't get rewarded like the other 90%. And so we're seeking more reward. We need more of a fix. And when you understand what's really going on there scientifically, you solve a lot of the associated issues with being driven.
So I always say that I'm a recovering driven person. So he's saying you should just be driven, but and not be and be okay with it.
Well, what he's saying, first of all, understand that this driven thing that you are is normal. Okay. And so I'll quickly, just for fun, I'm going to share three quick excerpts because this will help answer
Yes.
the question you're asking. And I'm pretty passionate about this particular book. But excerpt one, he talks about, again, the driven. He says, your genetic difference can lead you to feel there is something wrong with you, and the associated shame can create a hellish existence. The driven are at risk for addictions they believe will provide relief. And then I'll do one more. The driven are innately pulled toward the success they believe will finally leave them feeling rewarded. And so it's just first and foremost understanding what's going on. And then once you understand what's going on, you can manage it. And he teaches lots of ways to manage it. But also, please understand, that's what I'm teaching in this book are ways to manage it. And so I teach 3 discoveries in this book. And discovery number 1 is I am driven. And so the whole idea there is for you out there to just understand what being driven is. Once you understand that, yes, you can then manage it. And so I love that you're saying you're a recovering driven person. That's the beauty, is it doesn't leave us. It's still in there. It's just a different kind of drive that's possible. And everything that I've been talking about with going inside, cleaning house, that drive will be magnified. And Doug and I have had this conversation. He's convinced too that we don't lose our drive once we heal. The drive becomes even greater. It's a different kind of a drive. It's a much more powerful, impactful kind of a drive. So that, all the way back to your question, that would be a book I would highly recommend. And then I already mentioned Untethered Soul and Letting Go. I would highly recommend those 2 books around this topic that we're on. And those have been 3 of the most impactful books for me in the last couple of years. And there's just no aha books in the last, few months to really speak to.
I love Untethered Soul too because Michael Singer is also an entrepreneur. Like,
Yes.
didn't he sell like WebMD or
Yeah,
like,
he built like $100 million
right,
company. Yeah.
right.
So he's a very impressive entrepreneur, and he did it. He literally built that business with everything we're talking about here in a very spiritual state. So he proved that it is true. And for me, I started saying this about 15 years ago, and I started talking about how, I'm trying to find this mentor, teacher, coach that is both a successful business owner and spiritual. Because what I realize is any really strong spiritual person I found, if they had a business, they had built their business around their spirituality. And that I was looking for somebody that just built something completely different with that spirituality. And that is Michael Singer. I mean, that's exactly what he did. Really
I mean,
great story.
his
Yeah,
story is so phenomenal. I mean, I
really.
just love the story about him, like and how things came to him. Like they asked him to be a professor, and he's walking in barefoot, teaching a
Yes.
class of
Yes.
things that he learned because of his meditation practice.
Yeah.
And he was teaching physics, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
and then the other great thing about his story too is he built that $100 million company. I think the number is correct, and then he sold it
yes,
or merged with another company, and then there was fraud with the merging company, and he was the CEO, and
yes,
so he, had to deal with the FBI and I mean, and stayed zen through the whole
yes.
process and came out unscathed from a standpoint of he was clean as a whistle. But I mean, if anything is going to question your spirituality or your zenness, it would be that. And he just showed that you can stay zen through just about anything.
Yeah, and I think it's because he really didn't identify with himself as a CEO. He
Yeah.
didn't identify with $100 million. He was just doing the same practice every single day. And it was 5 years.
Oh
Can you
yeah.
imagine FBI on you for 5 years? And he wrote the book,
Yeah.
Untethered Soul, during that time, right? Like,
Yeah. He's a pretty
phenomenal.
pretty special dude.
Have you been to the Temple of the Universe?
I have
His,
not. It's
yeah,
on my list, but I have not.
I got to do that too.
Mhm.
Okay. How about discipline number 6? Say no often.
All right. Say no
Say
often.
no, dot, dot, dot,
You
often.
got it. So this one, let's start with the bold statement is say no to everything that doesn't fit into the first 5 disciplines. And so this is how all the disciplines work together. And so to kind of pull that together, when you are thinking in 10-year timeframes, when you are taking time off, when you know thyself, when you are being still and you know you're 100%, what you need to say no to is so abundantly clear. And I always like to say, if somebody asks you to eat a worm, you'd immediately say no. It's that clear. It's that to the point. And so you will know what to say no to in your life. And just as important, you'll know what to say yes to in your life. And so it's all about getting good at saying no.
Yeah, it's like you've decided once, so you don't have to keep on asking like, should I lie to that client? Should I, charge those exorbitant fees? Because you've already decided that you're trustworthy, and you live your life that way. It's so easy to say no.
Absolutely. And on this, it's proven that we human beings get physical discomfort at the thought of saying no to somebody because you feel like you're letting them down. And so this is kind of working on your rewiring there as well. But what this helps you do is just set very clear boundaries, and it gets rid of that anxiety because again, it's so clear. And I realize in business, I'm masterful at saying no. I get a kick out of it. So I really enjoy it. But what I learned recently is as I look back on my personal life, I'm not as good at saying no in my personal life. And so I've really worked hard now at setting these kind of boundaries in my personal life as well. But the point I'm making here is you will calm that uneasiness and you will get good at saying no. And then one last little trick, somebody shared this with me. I didn't even realize I did it, but whenever I tell somebody no, I almost always offer them another solution. And so for instance, when people ask me to do their podcast or go do a talk or something, I'm having to say no to most of that because there's only so much of me to go around, i.e. my 100%. And so I have to say no most of the time. But what I will do in return is I say, well, I unfortunately can't. However, here are 3 people that I think would be great for you. So I'm always offering another solution. And so they tend to go away feeling good, even though I had to tell them no. But I've gotten really good at saying no in business and getting there in my personal life.
What would you like to say no to in your personal life?
Well, in my personal life, it's about, boy, what a great question. What I find is, can't think of a specific right now. And as I say this, hopefully something will come to the surface. What I find is with the people that are really close to me and I really love, I just kind of cave and say yes. And so it could be as simple as going to do something that I just don't feel like doing, and so I will feel bad like there's something wrong with me, or I'm not being fun or I'm being boring, but if I just don't feel like doing it. So we could fill in any of those blanks. It could be going to a party, to a restaurant, who knows what, but I don't say no as easily because I feel like I'm letting them down. Where again, in business, I can say it in a snap. And so it's things like that where it's improved greatly in the last year, maybe two. I don't know if that helps, but that's hopefully that answers it.
I can share, our family friends are Adam Sandler, the Sandler family,
Mm-hmm.
and they often invite, Adam often invites my husband Rodney to go play basketball, and he will often say no, or like, let's go to the hot tub or whatever, do something. He's just like, no. And I'm just like looking at him like, you're saying no to Adam?
How great
And
is
he's
that?
and he's just like, but I don't want to go. And I'm just like, he just wants to sit here and watch TV. I'm like, that's why you guys are friends. Seriously. It's like you guys are in eighth grade together and like literally, no, I don't want to go.
Good
Yeah.
for him. I mean, that
Right?
is so great because I
Right?
mean, that is the ultimate temptation, right? You get to go hang out with a celebrity. So that's so perfect. And that
He doesn't
experience,
care.
yeah, exactly right. But that's exactly it. It's if you don't want to go, you shouldn't go. Maybe sometimes, but most of the time you should be saying no.
Yeah, my daughter has been trying to get me to take her driving, and I'm just like, no, that I can say no to because I'm scared.
Yeah, have
So,
your husband do that
yeah,
one.
exactly. All right, how about we dive into discipline number 7? Don't do $25 an hour work.
Yes. And so this one, we'll start with the bold statement as always, and that is never do anything that you could pay someone $25 an hour to do. And so with this one, I always like to follow it up with a disclaimer. And so the discipline is don't do $25 an hour work if you want to make six figures or more. Okay. And so the idea here is there's nothing wrong with $25 an hour work. We need lots of people doing $25 an hour work. But if you aspire to earn six figures or more, you should not be doing any $25 an hour work. And so if you can pay somebody to do it, and it's simple math. And so again, as we pull together all these disciplines, once you know you're 100%, now all of a sudden you know the number of hours per week and weeks per year that you're going to work. So you have this small container, your work container, your 100% to provide that value to the world. All of a sudden now you get to maximize that because you should be doing $100 an hour, $200 an hour, $500,000 an hour work. And so that's the kind of work you should do. And anything else, just delegate that to people do $25 an hour work. And I have learned in my experience, you get a 5-to-1 return, assuming you're elevating yourself to higher dollar an hour work. You're printing money, quite frankly, because you're leveraging yourself. And so again, you typically get a 5-to-1 return on that $25 an hour work. And that's $25 an hour work. Now, all of a sudden, when you're up in the $1,000 an hour work, you could be paying people $100 an hour because you should be delegating that as well. But we won't go that far down that road. So what does that prompt for you?
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. If you're we do website design for, a living, like that's what we do. And a lot of the entrepreneurs want to make updates to their own website. I'm just like, why? Why are you doing that? Like, you can break your website. Like, why? Like, there's no reason. You could find someone to do it for $8 an hour
Mhm.
to do it rather
But
than,
what I would also challenge on that is now let's go back to that 100%, and that person only has so much time to create maximum value in the world. Why on earth, let's pretend that making those changes, let's pretend it's an hour a week. Even if it's an hour a week, they could be doing something that generates 100, 500, $1,000 an hour. So it's just simple math. Now watch this. That's just economic return and leveraging yourself. Now we're also talking about maximizing energy and inner peace. And so what we're also doing is we're getting you out of low energy work. We're getting you out of work that is less enjoyable, i.e. peaceful for you. And so the idea is to only work on high energy work, the work that energizes you the most. And then utopia is when not only are you doing this in your business life, but you're doing this in your personal life. And so if you don't get energy cutting your lawn, you should not be cutting your lawn. Pay somebody $25 an hour to cut your lawn for you. You shouldn't be doing it. But we can say that with all maintenance around your house, it's simple math because all of a sudden then you're freeing up time, more time to spend with yourself, with family, with friends, whatever it is, but it's stuff that does not drain your energy.
Changing your oil, car. Yeah, exactly. Like
You
all of
got it.
it. Yeah,
You got it. Unless you enjoy it. If you enjoy it,
exactly.
amen. Yeah.
Yeah, if you enjoy it. Awesome. Okay. I like this one. Discipline number 8, prepare every night.
Yeah. So starting with the bold statement, before your head hits the pillow every night, document the next day's plan. So before your head hits the pillow every night, document the next day's plan. Now, with this discipline, I caution you to not underestimate it because it's so simple. Disciplines 8 and 9 are really simple. And so some people, it kind of gets by them in terms of its power. And so if every day before your head hits the pillow, somewhere between when your workday ends and your head hits that pillow, you just lay out tomorrow's plan, typically in chronological order on whatever technology you prefer. I do it on a legal pad. So my legal pad is my technology. In this case, for this discipline, it's all about just laying out the next day in terms of your appointments, your projects, your calls, whatever work you need to get done. The power of it, again, we're talking about energy, we're talking about impact, we're talking about inner peace. You will literally sleep better. Your mind goes to work. Your subconscious is working while you're sleeping. You will wake up with solutions to problems the next day, and you will wake up and you will hit the ground running, as opposed to the opposite, which is not doing this, waking up in the morning and just letting the day come at you. You've lost then total control of your day. And so the person that says, I love to just wake up, and jump into my emails and let the day come at me, I won't buy that for a minute. You're just going to be less effective because you've lost control of your day. And so prepare every night.
Does it have to be at night? Can it be in the morning?
Well, that would fly in the face. I don't recommend that. That's probably better than not doing it at all. But don't lose sight of sleeping better, your subconscious going to work. In other words, there's just so many benefits about doing it before you go to sleep. But also understand, let's pretend your day ends at 5 o'clock, hypothetically. Doesn't mean that at 4:45 or 5 o'clock, you can't do it then. And then obviously, go home to your personal life and do whatever you do. And then your head hits the pillow, but just somewhere between the end of your workday and before your head hits the pillow. Just try it. I just recommend you try it one time, do it tonight out there, and let it speak for itself.
And how long does it take you to do that?
It's probably about a 10-minute exercise on average, plus or minus 5 minutes.
So you basically are looking at your calendar for the next day and thinking, okay, this is how I want to show up, or is it actual tasks?
Yeah, it's actually chronologically laying out the day. So, hypothetically, if you're going to, let's just say, get to the office and start working at 8 a.m., hypothetically, in that case, it would start at 8 o'clock. And what are you doing at 8 o'clock? And so for me, if I've got projects to complete, those projects are there. If I've got appointments, if I've got phone calls, if I've got a session that day, they're all listed in chronological order that I'm going to get them done. And then I wake up, hit the ground running, and follow that plan as soon as I get up.
And you're prepped for it. Because sometimes when I look at my schedule, my assistant sends it to me and she texts it to me right in the morning. I'm just like, man, I really don't want to do that. I really don't want to interview that intern. And I'll like outsource it to someone or, yeah.
For
So
sure. That's
I'm going to
absolutely.
try it. I'm going to
Yeah.
try it, Gino.
Please do. Please do.
All right. Discipline number 9, put everything in one place.
Yeah. And so, as I mentioned, 8 and 9, please don't underestimate their power. And so, number 9, as you said, put everything in one place. The bold statement here is to pick the one place where you will capture every idea, commitment, thought, action item, and promise. And so, this discipline is probably the most underestimated on the surface. And it's really great because our clients that go through our group coachings and our self-studies and our mastermind, the feedback we get on this one, it's always so profound in terms of the impact, but they also will say, how was I not taught this 20 years ago? And so it's so powerfully simple. It's that as you go out throughout your day, you just have to pick your one place, as we call it, the one place that you're going to capture everything. And so once again, mine is a legal pad. You can do this in a journal. You can do this in your phone. You can do this on a tablet. You can do this wherever you want to capture it. But what's happening for most driven entrepreneurs is they're just going throughout their day. They're jotting it on a sticky note, trying to remember it in their brain, putting it in their phone. It's in 6 different places. And by the end of the day, they're making all these promises, having thoughts, ideas that they forget half of it. They're letting people down. And what I just shared there in the last 30 seconds zapped half your listeners of their energy. So you want to talk about energy management. Now, all of a sudden, you pick your one place, you go throughout your day, you're having meetings, phone calls, whatever it is you're doing, as something comes up, as you make a promise, as you make a commitment, you just quickly jot it down in your one place. When you're sitting there in a meeting and you have a thought that you actually think you're going to remember 2 hours from now, you're kidding yourself. Or a commitment you make to somebody, you got to write it down immediately in your one place. And then what happens is you get to the end of the day, and as you prepare for the next day, as we just talked about, you also then compartmentalize everything from your one place throughout the day, all of those commitments, promises, etc., ideas, and you just put them in the appropriate place. So some things you'll grab for tomorrow's plan, some things you'll get done right there, and then other things you'll compartmentalize in your calendar for a future date. But the idea is just to capture it all, so you stop letting people down, you capture your ideas, you will literally get more done, and again, honor your commitments to people.
Yeah, because it makes you feel bad if you don't follow through,
Yeah, and
right?
not only will it make you feel bad, and again, there's an energy drain, but you're letting people down, so they're losing faith in you. In other words, you have people that just either don't respect you as much, they can't count on you, they're having to babysit you. There's nothing good in terms of that energy or impact.
All right. Final one, discipline number 10, be humble.
Yes, be humble. The bold statement here is to view yourself as an equal to every person on the planet. And so we're just talking about humility here. And as C.S. Lewis taught us, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And so the question is, do you view yourself as an equal to everyone on this planet? Or do you somehow think you're more, or sometimes less than, but more is the issue we're dealing with many driven entrepreneurs. And so the best way I like to teach and share this is if you picture kind of a spectrum or a range. And on one end of the range, you have the word humility. On the other end of the range, you have the word arrogance. Well, ironically, those 2 words, when you look up the definition is almost the exact same. And it's just your view of yourself in the eyes of others. And so arrogant people just think they're a little better than everyone else. Humble people don't think they're any better than anyone else. And so with that spectrum, if you can think about that, the exercise is just to think about yourself, be really honest, and put a little hash mark on that range in terms of where you really are. And if you really want to know how you're stacking up in the world, go to the 5 people you trust and love the most and ask them to put a hash on that range to see where you're really stacking up in the world. And so what we're talking about here, once again, is managing energy, making an impact, and having inner peace. A humble life will get you more of those things than an arrogant life, because we tend to attract to ourselves more of what we are. And what I find is the journey's a lot better surrounded by humble people than a whole bunch of arrogant people. Just my humble 2 cents.
And it doesn't mean that you're not confident,
You're
right?
here. That takes us back to the C.S. Lewis quote. It's just thinking of yourself less, not any less of yourself, just taking the focus off of you.
And also having a beginner's mind, because a lot of times when you do get to be that arrogant side, you feel like you have all the answers.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I
And we
have
don't.
nothing, I have nothing more to say to that than yes.
But a lot of the answers are on this book. So everyone, please buy it.
Well,
Shine 10
thank you for
Disciplines
that.
for Maximizing Your Energy, Impact, and Inner Peace. Gino Wickman, you are an extraordinary human being, so helpful, so generous, and so intelligent and creative. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being part of the EO Wonder podcast. I'm so
That means
excited for
That
what you're
means
going
so
to.
much. Yeah. So please pick up the book. If you're pinged, you can get a free first 27 pages of the book on the website, the10disciplines.com. And please take our true self assessment to see how free your true self really is, the10disciplines.com.
Thank you so much. And everyone, please check in with Gino on his website and buy his book.
Thanks, Kalika. What a pleasure.
Take care.
You too.